Bang. Welcome to the fine print, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Caleb Teskey, and for the first time in recorded history, I have a return guest on the program. I got Ben Wilcox from Offpistefarm in Sutton. Ben, thank you for coming back to visit with us.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.
Now, do you want to announce the news, or do you want me to do it, or
as far as getting my license?
there you go. Yeah, I wanted to do a little follow-up with you here and sort of see how you're feeling, see where you're at, and first of all, how you feeling?
I'm feeling like I'm ready for the harvest season to get here. But I'm plugging away. I'm working a lot, kind of working two jobs, so I'm just plugging away in the middle of summer, working a lot.
Still doing some carpentry?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
You got some pigs down there and some chickens now too, I see.
Yeah, we got pigs and chickens and vegetable garden going too.
Oh,
trying
beautiful.
to grow some of our own food.
Nice. I'm excited for your pig roast next month or whenever.
Yeah, that should be a good time. I think this will be like the 6th or 7th one we've done.
Oh, awesome.
Yep.
Well, so Ben, I wanted to have you on. First of all, I want to say congratulations, man. I know you've been working really hard for this, and it's nice to see some of my guests getting licensed.
Yeah, cool, man. Thank you.
Now, last time we spoke, you mentioned a couple of things that I'd like to follow up with you on. One of them was about the banking. We had sort of this catch-22 where you sort of can't get a bank account until you have a license, but you can't get a license until you have a bank account. Or have you worked out the kinks with the banking?
Yeah. I was able to get a cannabis account opened, but to get my application approved and to get through that process with the state, they were willing to accept just a letter of intent from VSECU, who I ended up working with, because VSECU wouldn't give open an account until I had a license. But as soon as the application was approved, I got a letter from the CCB saying that I was licensed and ready to go, and that was basically to give to VSECU, and then they worked with me on getting the account opened at that point. So, and then I got it opened up.
Now, if I recall correctly, you said even right after your license was approved that you still had to maybe wait for a physical copy of the license or some kind of extra confirmation on top of that?
Yeah, I think it was, well, the way I read it, it was conditional, upon getting that account opened up, because I didn't technically have a cannabis checking account opened with VSECU at that point in time. But that's a requirement of getting licensed, so yeah, it's that catch-22 you mentioned. I mean, it's that, so it took a couple weeks, but I got that all squared away. I had to work with VSECU in their timeline. I think they were understaffed and overwhelmed too, at the time. So it just, and they didn't have, they weren't able to just all of a sudden put everything down and stop everything and get all these cannabis people opened up. They had to do their due diligence, and they had some vacation time lined up in there too. Like the person I was working with went on vacation or was away for a couple weeks or 10 days or something. So to go on vacation, there's not a lot you can do, except wait for him to come back. So
a strongly worded email.
Yeah. But the control board too was really willing to work with me on that and offer extensions to complete that final requirement, basically until that the VSECU was able to get it done.
I was going to say, because isn't there some provision where you need to get a bank account open within 15 days of your license being approved?
That was the original notice I received. Yep. But I wasn't able to do that because the person doing opening accounts at VSECU was out of the office for a while, and I don't know the details. I mean, I don't know exactly what happened, but she was out of the office, and so I couldn't really make that deadline, unfortunately. But they gave me an extension on it,
which seems like the correct decision.
Yeah,
I-
I was happy with it. I mean, obviously, yeah.
Sure.
No, it's been everything's getting started, man, and it's a lot of work for everybody in the cannabis. That always throws a wrench in the works. It's something I'm kind of used to at this point, just because it was the same way with hemp and CBD and stuff first. Early on, trying to get that going. I remember the first CBD deals I did felt so much like pot, like weed deals. Even though I had a license where it was legal federally, but it just was,
Just got
so
some
weird.
PTSD left over, just like.
Yeah. So anyways,
Now, do you have all the other stuff hammered out, all the insurance and all of that stuff?
yeah, that I had before that I submitted with my application. I paid for insurance and had a binder and everything. The only piece of that application that I couldn't 100% do was that bank account because of just the way it all worked. But it took a couple weeks, but it got this done. It's opened. I have my minimum deposit in there, and I have an account for it.
Can I ask you, what does your insurance cover you for?
It's product liability insurance, as far as I understand it. So it covers. It's a 1 million, 2 million policy for product liability if somebody were to come back and say that the products I produce harm them in some way or something. I'm not actually 100% sure. I just know I've got it, to be honest with you, and hopefully don't have to use it. I don't, but
That's my understanding of insurance as well, is like, I don't know why, but I know I need to have it.
yeah, I probably should look into the more of the details of it. I mean, I talked a little bit about that stuff with the broker when I was buying it for sure, but
Can
yeah,
I
I mean, a
ask-
lot of if I sell to a wholesaler or something and they repackage it, then I would think the product liability would go onto them, would be assumed into them, but that might have to be details of a purchase contract or agreement or something, ironed out at that point.
I would also think that, and boy, do you mind if I ask who you went with for insurance?
Yeah, I used Winooski Insurance, and they've been good. I had a CBD insurance policy from them years ago, and at the time they were one of the only places in the whole state that was doing CBD policies, and they were able to do it at a very competitive rate. So I went with them again this time for this insurance, and again they gave me a competitive rate and we're good to work with.
Cool. I haven't heard of them. Maybe I should reach out and see if we could chat.
Yeah.
Now, I wanted to ask you, I know there was a lot of talk leading up to licensing, or when they started rolling out licensing, about sort of the outdoor growers waiting to get their plants to grow, these delays. And has the delay sort of set you back at all, or have you made it out the other side okay?
It's not going to be quite as high of a yielding year as it probably could have been. I mean, this is kind of feels like a startup year for me again. I've got some equipment and things that I got from doing CBD hemp that I can reuse for this, which is nice. That makes a big difference. I mean, it's definitely not like the first year ever growing, but financially it feels like it is. I don't have a ton of money to put into it. Extra money to put into it. So
Yeah, more money.
yeah, so I'm hoping that the crop will do good this year, and then I can use some of that to help, reinvest for next year. And like one of my biggest things in my particular operation that I could use to do better is starting my own plants. So like trying to start that many plants myself was a stretch for me this year, and it's the most I've ever started myself. In years past doing hemp, I used to buy started plants from other nurseries. I always started some small percentage myself, and I do like starting them myself, but I just wasn't set up for it, and nurseries were, so I just bought them, and I couldn't they were so cheap to buy. Usually for me that wasn't worth, so I just bought them. But this year, there's no nurseries, there's nowhere to buy THC plants, you have to do it yourself. I mean,
Although it does seem like they are now going to allow nurseries and clones, and
that could be good for next year for sure. So, but yeah, for this year, I started all the plants I've got going. I started here myself. So
and how many plants can you get on a tier 1 outdoor?
125.
Okay. Sorry, I just boy, there's been so many changes. I remember last time we were talking about square foot versus flower and canopy, and it seems like that has sorted itself out here.
Yeah. Yep. Square footage is for the indoor, and then the outdoor you can have a plant count.
Now, let me ask you, do you care to share any of where you get your genetics from?
Yeah, I mean, I mostly have seeds from seeds I produced here from years past. You're allowed to have a couple flowering plants, per person in the state. And so if you can get an awful lot of seeds off of those. But I basically would just experiment with growing some plants here outdoors and see which ones did good and seed them, and to make offspring. So I have a lot of seeds from that, and which I originally, of course, got from other people. But yeah, and keeping some clones and stuff and cloning. I did a lot of cloning this spring, trying to.
Yeah, no, it seems like, I gotta say, I talked to some guys about selling seeds, and it seemed like maybe a super cheap option of something to do, because in Vermont, I guess you could sell seeds without a license if you're selling them as a novelty item. Is what I've heard.
And one thing I heard too, just through press through the news, and I haven't looked into it myself totally legally, I guess, but the DEA came out with some letter or interpretation or something this past spring that basically said all cannabis seeds are hemp seeds and fall under the Farm Bill regulations of containing less than 0.3% THC, so therefore are legal nationwide. I've heard that.
It kind of makes me wonder, like, why would you get a cultivation license because if you want to sell seeds, they said a licensed cultivator could sell it to another cultivator or a retailer or something, but if you could sell them without a license as novelty items without all the hassle of the state intervention, it seems like.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see why that people do. I mean, you certainly could. I mean, I kind of like to make my own just because I know what the genetics are. I mean, I've just in the years of doing hemp and stuff, I've tried so many seeds from people over the years that say they're going to be the best genetic ever for sun grown, and they killer, blah 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 blah. Everyone says that about their seeds. There's nobody who says these seeds suck, dude. They don't even start to flower till September, but that's what they do. I've planted them and grown 50 of them, and none of them start flowering until the second week of September, when the days are finally like 12. That doesn't work for sun grown out here.
And now you did win a Hetty Cup for your CBD flower, is that right?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay. I've got some of that going.
And is that some of your own genetics as well?
That was kind of a accidental cross. I mean, that's just the first generation cross that I had of some 2 early flowering varieties, and that offspring turned into be a pretty good CBD dominant flower. I mean, it's like a 1-to-1.
So you won on accident.
It was an accidental breeding project for sure, but the offspring's pretty good. I've got a few of those going this year. See how they do.
Now, have you talked to any retailers that you're maybe want to let us know about? I don't know if you're trying to keep that close to the vest, but are there any guys like you might be working with that we should be on the lookout for, where we might find your flower?
Well, the only ones that I really talked to that seem pretty interested is Winooski Organics. Those guys in Winooski.
Eddie.
Yeah, they've got a really cool shop, and I went and was able to check it out during the NECAN weekend, and they're just seem like great guys too. And
I agree.
so hopefully be able to sell some there. That might be through, I'm going to be, maybe wholesaling to other brands and stuff too. We'll see what we do there, but them, and then I don't actually know the name, but the store that's opening up next to Harpoon Brewery down in Windsor.
I don't know that one.
It's yeah, it's gonna be like Nick and Sam. Anyways, their store that is hopefully going to be opening down there, and they've expressed some interest. And then a few other people have reached out. We'll see what happens. I'm probably going to try to wholesale most of my crop, to be honest with you, and sell maybe a small percentage of it under my own brand and see how that goes. But
I was going to say, are you going to just sell it off and have dispensaries white label it, or are you working on your own packaging?
I haven't started working on any packaging yet. I mean, that's something I've been thinking about over the last couple of years, and I got to look into the new rules that they've just put out and think about it more. I would like to use like light blocking glass jars, mason jars type thing, but I know those have the rubber O-ring, and I'd have to look at the details of the rules and see if that's allowed, and maybe apply for a variance, or look into the options of packaging and see what's out there. I have to do more research on that for sure.
I feel like I saw recently that rubber was going to be allowed, but don't quote me on that.
Yeah.
I'll check into that after.
I definitely personally like the rubber. I mean, not rubber. The amber mason jar style glass mason jar, the light blocking glass, and reusable and recyclable, except for that lid. Unfortunately, like I know we've got like hundreds of those lids. We have boxes of mason jars, and I don't know. We don't like to reuse the lids. I mean, sometimes if the O-ring looks good, still we'll reuse it. But for like canning our pickles and stuff, pickled vegetables, we like to use fresh lids just because that's what they recommend.
Yeah, they get all rusty.
So anyways.
So, but that must save you you're allowed to say you want to wholesale your whole crop, right? You can just chop it down, cure it, dry it, put it in a big bag and sell it off to a wholesaler, right? You don't have to package it.
No, I mean, that would be up to, I guess, the condition that the wholesaler is looking to buy it in. What condition they want, they might want, if they want it trimmed or untrimmed, buck, that, there's
good point.
Most people, I would assume, would have at the bare minimum want it to be bucked untrimmed,
And
nobody really wants to buy stocks, but people might buy it. And for hemp, people were going around trying to say they'd take it wet out of your field. It's just, there's all sorts of different models for trying to sell it. But for me personally, usually what I've done is harvest it myself, hang it, dry it, buck it, trim it, and cure it, and all of a sudden sell it as dried, trimmed flour ready to go, and be broken down further, by the pound.
Sure. And an interesting point that Greg Newman made from Emerald Rose Grows was that if you sell your product he said, first of all, if I sell my product to a dispensary, I want my label to be on. I want people to know that that's my product. And he also said that way, if there's any liability issues later, if you take your weed to a dispensary and sell them a whole bunch and tell them to white label it, and now your weed has their label on it, it goes out to somebody who gets sick from a mold issue or something. Now he said that will sort of confuse the issue of who's liable for that.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on that one?
Yeah. I mean, those are, I think, details that would need to be ironed out in a transactional, at a point in time during a transaction, a contract of sale. Like the way I used to sell my hemp, and the way I personally feel about it, is as soon as I sell it to somebody else, they need to inspect it and make sure it's good and looks good and is safe and stuff. But then as soon as because it's a natural biodegradable product that, it's produce. It's a produce essentially. I can't be liable for how they store it and how they treat it after it's out of my control and out of my possession. So as soon as they purchase it from me, at that point in time, the possession changes from I own it previously, then they pay me for it, and then they own it and it's theirs, and then they become liable for anything that happens to it after that.
And it has to be tested before it goes to a wholesaler.
Yeah, I would sell it to them as tested, with
Sure.
full panel testing, and they look through it all, inspect it all they want, and make sure it looks good to them. And if they want to refuse it at that point, then they can, and I'll maintain ownership and liability. But as soon as they purchase it from me and the transaction occurs, it's their possession, their liability, and no longer my responsibility. Because they could leave it out in the rain and it would get all moldy, and then it's not my fault that they did that.
Or store it somewhere like super dank or humid or not sealed properly or something like
Exactly.
that.
And it's a biodegradable product that's subject to the conditions it's stored in, and it changes really quickly. So,
Hmm.
And if it was in their possession at that,
Oh.
I don't know.
Oh, your audio cut out a little there.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah,
Sorry.
here we go.
Anyways, that's how I picture it happening,
And have you talked to any testing labs yet?
I've used Via Diagnostics in the past for CBD testing, so I'll probably, and they seem like a pretty legit lab. I like using labs that, are dialed in and give accurate results consistently. So
Yeah,
probably use them.
they do food testing for like Nestle and these big food companies, right?
Yeah, they've been a testing lab for a long time. They're not just starting up just now to start doing cannabis. They've been in it for a long time.
And let me ask you this. This is a little off the track of what I wanted to talk about, but when you select your product that you're gonna send in for testing, I've read some different techniques of how you're supposed to go through your field in sort of like a hourglass pattern around the edges, through the middle, along, and so that way you're not just like picking your best buds off the top or whatever, that way you're getting an accurate, like a representative sample size of, the average sort of quality of your crop instead of just, cherry picking, as it were.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's it. The accuracy of your COA paperwork is only as good as the sample that you send in, and so that was how it was. That was the hemp rules for sampling your crop had to be done in that pattern, like you were mentioning, and they allowed, you didn't have to take the top cola, but you had to take like a good top bud off of like a lateral branch or something, off of, and it was based off of how many plants you had. So if you had, and I can't remember the exact numbers, but if you had 300 plants, you had to sample like 30 of them or something. So maybe 10%. And same thing if you have a dried batch, you have to just kind of go through and like close your eyes and just like randomly pick like small amounts and then kind of mix that all together and grind that up. And yeah, it's hard to get an accurate batch sample from a large batch is kind of difficult, really.
I mean, I imagine outdoor that's probably even more difficult,
For pre-harvest stuff, I mean, you're able to send them wet samples. So you just do that hourglass pattern and send them a wet sample, and then they're able to calibrate for the moisture in the material when they do the testing.
And now,
they dry it up,
so you are selecting your own samples and sending them. How do you get them to the lab? Do you put them in the mail? Do you drive them over?
Yeah, for the hemp, I used to just put them in the mail and you select it yourself. I think now under this year, because it's finally, they're under the federal rules this year, you have to have a sampling agent come take your sample for you. So you're not allowed to do it yourself anymore.
And who is that? Someone that works for the state, or is that someone you have to hire independently?
I'm not exactly sure. I'm not cultivating hemp this year, so I've lost touch with those rules a little bit. But
okay.
You had to. It's a sampling agent can be like a law enforcement person, I think, or someone who registers themselves as a sampling agent.
Are you saying that's just for the hemp program?
That's for the hemp program, because
Okay.
that's the federal rules that the USDA came up with, and which changed the hemp program. When it was under just state control, it was just so much easier and better. The federal government made it a lot more difficult.
Imagine that.
Yeah.
No, but let me ask you, do you think that's a more unbiased way to take samples by having somebody else come and take them?
Absolutely. Yeah.
But it's
I
got to
mean,
be
when I'm doing,
expensive, to pay all those people, like that's a whole other like staff that you need to do that kind of shit.
yeah, I don't know what you'd have to do for the hemp thing. Yeah, I would imagine it'd be a day's wages for somebody or partial. I mean, it doesn't take that long for a small tier cultivator. It honestly doesn't take that long to go around and whack some clippings off of plant, 20 plants real quick, especially if you're not cherry picking. If you really are doing it blind, you're just going and cutting the top and something and throwing it in. I used to
Right.
just do that and cut them in
And-
a paper, put them in a paper bag.
And why would you cherry pick? You don't want to misrepresent the quality of your product, do you?
No, I don't. I never have cherry picked. I've always wanted to have as most accurate and representative COA as I can, just because for that reason. I mean, I'm not trying to, but plenty of people do. I mean, that was just so common in hemp business and in the industry nationwide. You see these COAs that people are like, oh, it's 28% freaking, sun grown, which, I know you can do in certain areas maybe, but under the most ideal conditions ever and pick the top cola, but like, you're not going to have hundreds of pounds biomass all tested at that high,
Yeah, I would like to. I hope that we see some kind of like standardized testing protocol because, in between labs, you got different equipment, different gear. It's got to be calibrated properly, and
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know the whole process for getting to be a licensed testing laboratory, but I would assume a lot of that is has to do with becoming a licensed testing laboratories. You have to have certain standards, I would think.
Sure, and there's some.
I pay attention to the cultivator rules mostly. It's too much other stuff to get a grip on. But yeah, I mean, it's got to be a good lab. That's why I'll probably just use Via Diagnostics again. And I hope there's more labs that open. And honestly, and there's more competition. I mean, when I first started in CBD, like I had to use a lab down in Massachusetts because there wasn't even any in Vermont that were doing it yet. And then eventually one opened up and Northeast Processing started doing it. And I don't know, it's just, there's not many that do it. So
the state mandated testing and there wasn't even a lab in the state.
Well, I can't even honestly remember if the first year, if I did it, the first year I did it, man, it was like the Wild West. Like I can't honestly remember what the mandates for testing were.
Okay.
You just had to have a crop that was under 0.3% THC and you had to show that somehow on a piece of paper, but
it seems like a long way to go to test a sample or, it's a long drive for somebody to get that.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, yeah, I used to do it and drive it down.
You drive it down yourself?
Yeah.
Wow.
I didn't trust to mail it back then, but then I started mailing it with copy of my hemp permit and stuff. And once the 2018 Farm Bill went through, I started mailing it in the U.S. Postal Service.
Now, Ben, can I ask you about edibles? I feel like maybe you were, I feel like there was some edibles somewhere involved here. Are you getting into that line of work at all?
Not really. No. I mean, I'm strictly just going to be a cultivator for now. And, I have to, it could be a way to try to sell some of your small buds and trim. If you get it extracted, that can be used to make edibles. The extract can be used to make edibles. But I'd have to either sell that to someone else or a product maker or something at this point, I think.
I'm sorry if I misremembered that.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to try to get, if I can have somebody else, a licensed product manufacturer, make them and then purchase them back or something. And, I have to look into the details on that. But yeah, probably not this year. I'm not going to be doing anything like that this year, I don't think.
Let me ask you, how are your plants doing? Are they strong? You doing well out there? Did you survive the hailstorm?
They're doing all right. Haven't had any hail yet here that I know of. Had some pretty strong wind. But yeah, they're doing all right. I've had a few that, I think because of the conditions of some of the mother plants that I was trying to use for making clones got pretty root bound and 5-gallon containers. They were in there for longer than they should have been, probably. Those ones didn't do so good, but all the younger ones are doing pretty good, as I was hoping they would, and they're doing fine. They'll definitely have something to harvest this fall.
And you got your little battery, your little house with your solar panels and your battery packs. All that's up and running.
Yeah, man, that's kicking ass right now. That haven't run a generator since that system got hitched online.
Wow.
So
how much it costs you to run a generator per day, do you think?
Back this spring when the battery bank was really failing and I was running the generator a lot, it was costing I don't know, probably like $1,000 a month to run it, I'm guessing.
And how much for this other system, do you think?
Well, this one I took a loan out to pay for, and but it's a fixed loan payment, so considerably less than that, way cheaper than that.
Good.
And yeah, it's been doing awesome. I need to actually get some more stuff because I'm not able to use all the power right now.
No,
but that's how I designed it. I mean, I was anticipating trying to run some more equipment. I'm not done with that project yet. I still have to attach a generator to the system and build a shed off of it, and I really got to get going on that actually. Like,
have you talked to Efficiency Vermont at all?
I looked when I was searching around for financing for the project. I did reach out to them, but they didn't do financing for solar projects. They just did them for insulation projects, like energy efficiency projects, not electrical energy, I guess. You know, heating efficiency.
Isn't that kind of the same?
I mean, I thought so, but no, they just didn't have any programs for that yet. So
I wonder if they're tapped out. I wonder if all the weed growers have been hitting them up to,
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I could definitely get some. I'm still not going to be able to run like a indoor grow operation really off of this system at all, but I'm hoping it's big enough, and it should be big enough to have very small, like one light with a little bit of climate control, so I can keep some mothers alive through the winter if need be, of really good phenotypes or something, or maybe try to do some winter indoor seed making or something like that.
Oh, that's an interesting idea.
And use and it would run off the solar panels, and then it'd still have the generator hooked up as backup, but it would run off the solar panels.
Huh.
Basically.
I like where your head's at, Ben.
So yeah, it'd be cool, man. It's been a dream of mine for a long time, actually, to have something like that set up. I started on that in like 2018, probably, with pouring the slab, and I did all that. I built the whole building myself. The only thing I hired out the help for was actually getting the solar panels installed in the.
Yeah, I think I met the guy when I was out there.
Yeah. Good guy, really good crew. So Solar Tech, if anyone needs solar in the Northeast Kingdom or anywhere in Northern Vermont, they're a good crew.
Solar Tech, where are they out of?
Right here in Sutton.
Oh, no shit.
Yeah.
I'd love to talk to them.
Yeah. Really
Cool.
good people.
Well, Ben, I'm exhausted. I've been on the phone since 8 o'clock. I'm so happy that you came here to follow up with me. I want to give you the last word here, man. If you got any final thoughts, I want to say congratulations again, and I wish you the best. But I'm going to leave the last word for you.
Thanks, man. Yeah. I'm super excited. I'm excited for everybody in the whole state. All the businesses out there that have been getting licensed and approved in the last month. It's exciting every meeting to see who else new gets approved, and excited for this fall to see what everybody has out there and available, and for the whole rest of the year and the next few years. It's going to be a long process, but yeah, it's exciting times. So very fun.
It sure is. Yeah. All right, man. Well, thank you for your time again, and for real, man. I wish you the best of luck out there, and I'll see you at the pig roast, man.
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, we'll talk to you later. Rest up.
Peace.
Later.